Breaking news, this is your late night World War III update. I gotta be brutally honest, I do not want to be making this video. This is the second video I've made today, which doesn't happen too often. And that's because the information I gotta share is just too critical to defer until tomorrow. Some new info has come to light that makes everything make sense. It's gonna provide an explanatory framework for what is going on in Eastern Europe, and I guarantee you, nobody else is talking about this. Now, before we go here, I gotta say, I got a message from a friend today, somebody I trust, and they notified me that one of their contacts who works with the military-industrial complex, very high-level stuff, very well-connected, has advised them if they have any big league preparedness projects that they need to, quote-unquote, hurry up. Now, they wouldn't go into any more detail than that, probably due to non-disclosure, classified information, but I'm telling you that this is somebody I trust, and if they're saying that people are telling them, people in influential places are saying that you need to hurry up, that's concerning. Very, very disconcerting to say the least. So all the more reason to hear what I have to say today, because that maps on perfectly well. Now, in the last few days, I've been focused primarily on what's going on in Eastern Europe, which is not to discount or minimize what is happening currently in the Middle East. That situation could spiral out of control any hour. However, I do think that something big is going down here. Now, recall that in the last couple days, I've been talking about a few things. F-16s are coming to Ukraine. They're going to be armed with missiles that have a 500-kilometer range. We have a NATO exercise currently occurring, one of the largest in history, 100,000 troops, all currently amalgamating in the Polish region. We also have a Polish air alert issued yesterday for the eastern part of the country, which was basically ado with increased military activity in that region. And the information that I'm about to share with you today is going to explain exactly why they're doing that. And nobody, definitely not in the mainstream media, and nobody in the alternative media is talking about this yet. We also have the imminent replacement of the commander of the Ukrainian military. And this is very important because why are they fast-tracking this now in and around the time of the election? And that's the other thing. We have a Russian election that is coming. And all of this stuff that I'm going to talk about revolves around that. They're about to replace the Ukrainian commander with somebody who's likely going to play ball and do the crazy shit that they need them to do to bring us close to nuclear Armageddon. What am I talking about? I'm talking about very likely the intelligence chief Kirill Budanov, who's going to take the place of Zaluzny, and he is going to continue to execute the directive of targeting the Russian strategic infrastructure within their country. We're talking about their oil refineries, we're talking about their military bases, possibly even their nuclear triad. Now, we also have a British plan that was leaked to put in an expeditionary force into Western Ukraine, impose a no-fly zone within the country, potentially attack Transnistria, and just cause a bunch of other chaos to free up the Ukrainian troops, allow them numerical superiority so they can engage the Russians on the front, potentially push the Russians out, and then have some bargaining power to then negotiate with Russia with. Now, in light of all of that, we also had this plane that got shot down. And this is the most critical thing. There was a Ilyushin 76 military plane, a Russian plane that was shot down in Russia by NATO Patriot missile defense systems. It's pretty much guaranteed at this point in time that that's what's happened. First, Ukraine admitted they did it. They bragged about it. Then they denied it because they thought, or they found out that there were 65 POWs on the plane. Then they denied there was POWs. But there's a 90% chance that it was Ukraine that shot it down. And according to the research that was conducted by Russia, that seems legit. It was definitely shot down with a Patriot missile. Now, the reason why this is so important is because the Russians are threatening to strike Poland at an airfield there, which is used to ship things out to Ukraine, not to fly things in, but it's a logistics hub, okay? So there's a threat of a Russian retaliatory strike. Get a load of this. In response to the attack on the Ilyushin 76 plane, Russia has threatened a retaliatory strike on a NATO military airfield located in, I won't be able to pronounce this, Rzeszów, Poland. This airfield is a key hub for the shipment of Western weapons to Ukraine. The Kremlin's official perspective, represented by journalist Dmitry Kizilyov, has expressed the idea that if a similar incident occurred in the United States, the reaction would be very similar. Now, in response to this, to the threat of a potential strike, Poland has issued a warning to civilian aircraft pilots about heightened military activity in its eastern airspace. This warning will be in effect from February 5th to May 5th. Why May 5th? This is directly in response to this threat of a retaliatory strike. So this is not a do with Steadfast Defender, okay? They are actually worried that the Russians are going to call their bluff, attack NATO, knowing that even if we invoke Article 5, that likely means we're not going to declare war on Russia, and the emperor is going to have no clothes. Paper tiger is going to reveal itself, because I don't think we will, because we simply don't have the manpower, and I don't think we want nuclear war as much as they do. We've been crossing their red lines. They've yet to really cross any of our red lines. The first time they do, and they realize that we're not going to retaliate, then, or at least we're not going to retaliate in a way that is going to vertically escalate the situation, then I think that's when things could potentially deteriorate rapidly, okay? Now, civilian pilots are being advised to monitor air-to-ground voice communications and activate radar transponders to ensure their safety. Now, the reason why they are worried about a retaliatory strike is the following. According to the Russian investigation, and this is very important, and that this is not being reported in Western media is absolutely crazy, because think about what's happened. Patriot missile defense systems operated, very likely by NATO personnel, at least in part, shot down a Russian plane inside Russia. There are strong indications that NATO military personnel, including Americans, the UK, and Poland, may have been involved in the attack on the Russian military aircraft. The attack is believed to have been executed by Patriot missile defense, according to 116 rocket fragments and rocket mechanisms at the crash site, all with markings consistent with Patriot missiles. Additionally, traces of hexagon, a type of explosive often used in foreign-made munitions, were found in the fragments. Now, this is the crucial part. Western Link 16 system. Russian air defense specialist Alexei Leonkov, and this one is for you military buffs out there, suggested that the data used to target the Patriot missile defense system, the data that the Patriot used to target the plane, might have been obtained through the Western Link 16 system. Link 16 is a data exchange system used by the United States and NATO countries in their armed forces. The complexity of the attack may have prevented early detection, as the Patriot system didn't emit probing signals. So they're saying that the Patriot didn't have its radar on, so they must have had this signal from somewhere else. That is NATO. So, of course, in light of everything that is going on, they are very concerned about a Russian retaliatory strike, because for some reason, the Russians weren't happy about this, in spite of the fact that it was just 65, I don't want to say just, but from their perspective, it was 65 Ukrainian POWs. But quite frankly, we don't know who else was on that plane. I mean, for all we know, Valery Gerasimov has been missing lately. He's the third in command of the Russian military. Not to say he's the guy who makes an appearance very often, but there's been plenty of various events that you might have seen him at that we haven't. I'm not saying he would be on that plane. It wouldn't make sense. But there could have been some high-ranking officers, of course, the flight crew, which are going to be in very short supply for Russia at this point in time, and the $500 million plane. Okay, I think these are the planes they actually outfit for their doomsday plane. So now we also have to talk about this, because this is absolutely insane and it bears repeating. Remember those dates, May 5th. British strategists intend to execute the following plan by May 24th. I'm telling you guys, March is when Putin will likely get reelected. In and around that time, I think we're going to see more Russian mobilization. And then, according to this information that is circulating, and the UK hasn't outright denied this yet, which is crazy, and they've always talked about putting some kind of expeditionary force in there into the western part of Ukraine. They intend to execute this plan by May 24th, and it's contingent on the weakening of both the Ukraine and Russian armed forces. So they're waiting till both sides practically kill each other. Then they're going to move in, which will, of course, be the deciding factor to then push the Russians back, at least according to them. But get a load of this. London has initiated a secret plan to deploy NATO forces to Ukraine, specifically on the right bank of the Dnieper River, along the border with Belarus. The plan aims to free up Ukrainian forces to then confront Russia on the front lines, potentially forcing Moscow into negotiations on Kiev's terms. So they're going to hold the rear, and the Ukrainians are going to move to the front and probably die in large amounts because, of course, NATO is casualty averse and doesn't want to do it themselves. The operation could involve troops from Finland, Sweden, Romania, and Poland. Additional objectives include establishing a no-fly zone over territories held by Kiev, attacking the Transnistrian Russian exclave, and targeting strategic infrastructure facilities in Russia's northern regions. So we're not just talking about oil refineries, I don't think. They've targeted Russia's nuclear triad before. They have targeted various landmarks within Russia before. They've targeted critical infrastructure before. So I think that's what they're going to go after. They genuinely believe that this is not going to lead to some sort of nuclear escalation. The question is, where is Russia going to nuke? Does it even make sense for Russia to drop a nuke in Ukraine? Or is Russia just going to nuke a NATO base and see what we do? I mean, if we push them far enough, then things can happen. Now, of course, while all this is going on, the situation in the Middle East is rapidly deteriorating on every front, be it the border with Lebanon and Israel, the Houthis attacking ships constantly. There's been endless bombardment. Of course, we're not hitting anything because all their stuff is underground. And the same thing is true with Iran. We're never going to be able to defeat the Iranians because they have underground cities that they're fighting from. And even if we could get a force in there getting over the mountains, through the desert, I mistakenly compared it to the size of Texas. Iran is twice the size of Texas. So forget about it. Anyways, they actually are seriously considering this. So this is going to be a coalitional framework which is separate from NATO. So they're not going to have to tie this to Article 4 and 5. Now, here's some scary shit. Under a 282 million, not dollar, euro contract, Rheinmetall manned military vehicles are going to deliver 500 multi-purpose military trucks. And this is being rapidly procured by British military. They are saying that these deliveries are going to happen within the next 7 months. That's how fast-tracked this is. Why do the Brits, who have a military of what, like 70,000, why do they need 500 military vehicles procured so rapidly in just 7 months? Now, some people are going to say, well, because they're going to send them to Ukraine. That doesn't make sense to me, because according to this, this is to allow British military personnel to load flat racks onto the platform, multi-purpose trucks, which can carry essential logistics provisions such as ammunition, food, water, and support material to operational locations. So they're fast-tracking the creation of all of these armored vehicles, which is incredibly strange. That, to me, if you were talking about an expeditionary peacekeeping force, that's what you would use, right? Now, Chuck Schumer has said today that if this border bill fails, and apparently the leader of the House has rejected it already, then Americans are going to be fighting in Ukraine. He explicitly said that. He is probably the third or fourth member of the Biden administration who has said that. Or not member of the Biden administration, but Democrat who has said that. Now, Russia is responding to the positioning of nuclear weapons in the UK. Recall that the Americans are going to be placing nuclear weapons in the UK, tactical nukes. Once again, yes, UK has its own nuclear weapons. However, this is different, okay? These ones are going to be tactical nukes compatible with the F-35 delivery platform. Russia's permanent representative to the UN in Geneva, Gennady Gatilov, stated that if this deployment occurs, Moscow will feel compelled to respond. But that's not it. The potential deployment involves the reactivation of an airbase in the UK for American nukes. The move is seen as contributing to a tense situation, and Russia is carefully watching developments in this regard. In addition to this, I believe that they're also planning or considering deploying these weapons in other places as well, in the Baltic states and Poland. So they're considering the possibility of sending such weapons to the Baltic states in Poland. If you put nuclear weapons, or even the delivery platforms, into the Baltic states, which is basically a stone's throw away from St. Petersburg and Moscow, I think at that point in time, to call it a Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0 would be a massive understatement. Not that it really makes a difference, because we're talking about, well, it does make a difference in terms of strategic thought, because it's a matter of, minutes shaved off, which is crucial for surviving a nuclear strike. And if you're looking at what NATO has to bring to bear, they're prepared. They have the military potentially to go in and occupy after a decapitation strike, but they do not have the conventional military power to fight a direct one-to-one trench warfare campaign like what is going on in Ukraine right now. They are only equipped to, at this point in time, and the Russians got to be thinking about this, the limited manpower that NATO has as a collective is only suited at this point in time to a decapitation nuclear strike, meaning that they have enough troops to potentially, and I do say potentially loosely, they have the potential to go in after doing a decapitation strike on the Kremlin, which would be absolutely insane, I know, but don't think that they don't have a contingency plan for this if all else fails. And then they would have enough forces to go in and occupy Russia afterwards if they can minimize the blowback, the retaliatory strike from the Russians. If they can minimize and deflect and get them fast enough, which is why they're forward deploying all of these deployment systems. So shit's getting crazy. So the Russians are saying, well, maybe we will deploy nuclear weapons to Cuba or Venezuela. Now get a load of this. The Pentagon has now access to Scandinavian bases, including gaining access to an underground complex in the Osmark Caves in southern Norway, and to the Namsen fuel terminal in the central part of the country. Why does the Pentagon need access to an underground complex in Osmark Caves in the southern part of Norway? They are now having access to probably dozens of military facilities from from Finland. I was going to say Poland, and I combined Poland and Finland. From Poland and Finland to Norway and Sweden, access to all these military facilities. What do you think the Russians are going to think they're putting there? Because as of now, there really is no treaty that obliges the United States to disclose where they're moving their nuclear weapons to around Europe. I think they're still doing that in good faith. But as far as we know, and as far as the Russians know, and they might know more than we do, and they might be keeping quiet about it because they might also know that we know stuff about them that they haven't disclosed. Maybe that they have more nuclear weapons, that they're nuclear proliferating, that they've moved them to various places. So we don't even really know if what is being put there for public consumption is real, because neither side wants to rat the other side out because they know that they'll get ratted out too, type thing. But this is all incredibly concerning. And we're basically looking at the imminent dismissal of the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Valery Zaluzhny. And apparently he's been offered the job of being the ambassador to the United Kingdom. So is this going to be the beginning of a ruling from exile situation, or are they just trying to get rid of him so that whoever they put in place there can operate independent of his influence? Because I think they are really genuinely concerned that he could be a competitor to Zelensky in some way, shape, or form. And now that they've used him up, they're sending him packing. They've given him his ultimatum. And to top it all off, the commander of the Ukrainian Navy has predicted that the Crimean Bridge will not be standing by the end of the year. He's given a guarantee. And if that happens, you know, I mean, they've already targeted it once, and the Russians didn't drop a nuke anywhere. So, but times are changed now. We've already reached a new level of normalization of targeting Russian military bases inside their own country with NATO weapons. So anything is possible at this point in time. The Chinese market is in free fall, and I do believe a lot of people in the West here are laughing at that, saying, haha, look at that, we're number one. That's the canary in the coal mine. I mean, if anything, that means that our economy is most definitely, I mean, a stock market crash now is the least of my concerns, to be brutally honest. That will just be an indication that something bigger is on the horizon. And we've seen it today. You know, the market was starting to, wane, but the Fed still has this interest rate game that it can play to keep the markets artificially propped up. If things look like they're crashing, you know, Powell will come out and say, well, maybe we're going to lower interest rates soon or something like that. You know, they can do that. They can play those games. But eventually, the economy is going to prove so insolvent that I don't think any of those tricks are going to work. And I also think that there's money, big money, that's going to front run whatever crisis is coming next, because they know, because if this friend of mine, who I totally trust, and I know that his sources are 100% legit, is saying that his sources in the military-industrial complex are saying that you need to hurry up in your preparations without giving any sort of time scale as to work with, then I'm thinking that shit could go down any day now. Okay, so just stay prepped, stay up, and we will see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.